David Fowley of Keeping It Real. We are talking about Predator 5, aka Prey, which for whatever reason did not come out in theaters this past weekend. It landed on Hulu Plus. So if you have that streaming service, you can watch it for quote unquote free. And I know a lot of the chatter around this film has been, it's so beautifully shot and it's such a big screen kind of sci-fi horror adventure that, it deserves a big theatrical presentation. We're not getting that. I want to get your thoughts on that, but also just generally, what do you think of the movie, which is being also billed as a sort of prequel to the 1987 Arnold Schwarzenegger movie that kicked off like a lot. But people are also saying that this was supposed to be the first recorded visit of the predator species, the Yautja, is that how you pronounce it, on Earth? And I've got some thoughts on that, but yeah, let's get into it.
Yeah, so it's great to be here. Thanks for having me. I overall I like the movie, and I think mainly because it tells a streamlined, simple story. It's not too complicated. It's not. I think the last movie, The Predator, was just kind of scattershot
Yeah.
with just overall tone and the amount of people in the movie. It's hard to keep track of everybody, and some of the things just were, yeah, a bit much. Yeah, this is, keeping it simple, and I appreciated that as far as storytelling wise. Um, sure, would it have been better on the big screen? I probably would have enjoyed it more on the big screen. It's just it's just one of those kinds of movies that would probably have a better experience on the big screen. Sure. Um,
It's almost meant to sell giant 4K televisions,
right, right. Um, So yeah, I mean, overall, I liked it. I don't know about say like a return to form, or some people are saying it's the best one since the original, and I'm like, okay. I mean, it's hard to say. I guess it depends on what. I mean, the original '87 one was classic. Okay, it's a classic movie, and the best the best thing that this first sequel did was do something completely different because it has a totally different environment, setting. And what I like about that is it basically establishes, because that's the second in Predator 2, that's the second time we're seeing this alien species. Um, we really get the idea that these creatures, this is what they do. They go to different planets, they go to different locations on Earth, let's say, um, and hunt. And they look for the apex predator and they take that him or her on. Now, what I liked about this one is something I always thought about is like, well, this, when we were introduced to this creature in Arnold Schwarzenegger's Predator, John McTiernan's rather Predator, um, yes, that was brand new to us then and everything, but you wonder, okay, well, was this the first time this ever happened? And so some people, yeah, may think that this movie Prey, uh, Dan Trachtenberg's Prey, is a prequel. Some people may think it's like this is the first time. Well, we don't know that. They could have happened. Predators could have come by in the prehistoric times, and challenged some cavemen. That'd be cool. Um, so this is as early back as we've been, so far.
Mm,
This is as far as movies.
mm.
Okay, all right, fine. We'll get there. Now, this takes place in Great Northern Plains in 1719, and it was actually filmed in Canada. But I like the idea of a Predator going to different timelines. I think it would be even cool to go like a Predator in the future. My favorite Predator tale is the DC Comics Batman versus Predator, the first limited series, and that was pretty awesome. There was three of them: Batman
Really?
versus Predator 2, Batman versus Predator 3. It's pretty nuts. I guess he just kept on going back to Batman. It's like, how do it's maybe some kind of bro fest. I don't know.
They
Back to
they
Batman.
never they never took down the apex predator. That's
There you go.
Bruce Wayne.
It's hard to quit you. But I was gonna say Brokeback Batman, but that was bad. Um, but I said it. Um, yeah, I think it's a I think it's a more interesting concept than say the Alien franchise. And I only mention the Alien franchise because there were two Alien versus Predator movies because obviously we get to actually kind of get into some of the reasoning behind the predator species than we do the say alien species.
Mhm.
It's like they're uh a little bit more say humanoid and in a way, obviously because there's a guy in a suit and it's, arms and legs and all that. But they are calculating they're calculating in the way they, seek out their prey and hunt their prey. Whereas, you know, aliens are just going after everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's I haven't really thought of it like this until you started talking about it, but it makes a lot of sense. The aliens almost don't have they're almost devices that are used by other species in relation to other species, right?
Right,
I mean, in the first Alien, the space truckers discover, the remnants of the derelict ship,
right.
and then they bring it back and all sorts of things happen, and then the company kind of gets an idea. And I'm talking as if the kind of prequel movies Prometheus and Alien Covenant don't exist, just for the sake of simplicity.
Sure.
But the company kind of gets this idea of, hey, we can use these as weapons. Then the Alien versus Predator, the first film, we don't need to talk about Requiem at all, but in that movie, the predators were using the aliens as apex predators, kind of planting them
That's
on
right.
Earth
Yeah.
to fight as sort of rites of passage. And that's why I'm calling BS on this whole idea of prey being the first encounter, because Alien versus Predator opens up with those temples from thousands of years ago with the birthing chambers and all of that, and they got wiped out in the big blast because the predators lost essentially.
Now remind me, was that on Earth?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
because the
That's I've seen it probably once or twice, and it was a long time ago.
yeah, it's weird because I've never okay, I've understood that people hate Alien versus Predator.
Mhm.
I I really like Alien versus Predator. I think it would have been better as an R-rated movie, and I think a lot of
Sure.
people were just kind of annoyed that you've got these two hard R-rated franchises and you make it PG-13 for the kids. But as far as a storytelling standpoint, I thought, they really did a great job of melding those two franchises together.
Yeah.
Um, Alien versus Predator Requiem, I think, is irredeemable trash.
I've only
Um,
seen bits and pieces of that. I know it's a lot more violent. But yeah.
It is, and it's violent in the most like distasteful way that like exploitive. You've got alien predator
Explosions.
hybrids exploding out of pregnant women's like a maternity ward,
Awesome.
and like the first kill you see on screen is like a little boy like a chest bursting, and like you don't have to go all edgy,
I
man.
really
Just
want to
tell a
see
good
it.
story. But so yeah, that's why. And people may say, well, that's Alien versus Predator. That's not, in the canon. And if we can jump into spoilers here. So if you haven't watched this on Hulu, turn this off, go watch it and come back.
Yeah.
But I imagine if you're a Predator or an Aliens fan, you've probably already seen it. Uh, at the end of the film, uh, there's a gun that shows
Right.
up, a gun
Which
that somehow between the 1719 and 1992 or whenever that Danny Glover
I think it was
character from Predator 2.
89, 88, 89, I think was Predator 2.
No, it was in the early 90s, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, let me check. Go ahead.
Or
Keep
no, it
talking.
was 90, I think it was. Sorry.
You're right. You're
Um,
right. 90.
but that gun is
Yep.
presented by the Predators to Danny Glover when he
Yep.
emerges victorious.
Hmm.
And on top of that, and this gets into the canon of the Alien versus Predator, the trophy room inside the ship in Predator 2 is the
Hmm.
first time we see
Yep. The
the
trophy room.
xenomorph skull in the
Yep.
trophy
Hmm.
block. So, and that's what kind of opened the door to like, oh my God, Fox owns these two properties and they take place in the same universe that's canon. And
Hmm.
that's why ever since then they were trying to get an Alien versus Predator movie off the ground, and it took them, 10 years and a lot of strife. But the point that I was trying to make? I have no idea. But yeah, so like
But
let's
I
talk more
think you were
about
making the point of the whole this that, and you did make the point that this isn't considered the first appearance because it happened thousands of years. If Alien vs Predator established that it happened thousands of years even before Prey, this movie.
right. Now I will grant that, because that last encounter on Earth ended so disastrously, maybe the predators didn't come back until 1719. They're like, maybe the
Yeah,
coast is clear,
it
or
could
maybe
be.
there are other adventures in between that were just never kind of recorded, or even in terms of prehistory,
Hmm.
people wouldn't know exactly how to talk about this alien hunter. But so the prey opens up with a Comanche tribe,
Yep.
and Naru, played by Amber Midthunder, is I don't know, she's probably like a Comanche teenage girl. I don't know how old she's supposed to be. She's got an older brother who's probably like 20, named Taabe.
I think she's in
And
her late teens. Yeah, it's safe to say.
yeah, so she really wants to be a hunter, and because of the gender kind of, I'll call it gender politics, which is weird to apply to Native American tradition, but it was just the men are the hunter gatherers, or the hunters, and the women, they
Are the gatherers.
gather, they create the homes, they basically stay in camp and take care of the men. She doesn't want that for herself. She's actually being trained in the ways of medicine and healing, and she's got some adeptness for it. But she's also, I guess, somehow been secretly training. I don't know if Taabe's been training her, but she's pretty good with an axe,
Hmm.
and she understands a lot about the hunting culture. The only thing I can figure is that Taabe's been kind of giving her lessons on the side, because it's very clear that the other young male members of the tribe that are essentially his friends want nothing to do with her.
Yeah, I have a feeling that the older lady that she hangs out with, I'm not sure if that's her grandmother or what, but the older lady that kind of mentors her, especially with the use of like medicines, natural medicines, um, probably has had some type of a subtle influence on her without being, direct or noticeable to the rest of the village or the rest of the tribe. Um, I'm sure it's an influence that she's had from Taabe, her brother, who's a great hunter, but also that older woman character. Because I think what Naru, the young woman, is better at than anybody else we could tell is tracking. And she's becoming a good hunter, but she's probably best at tracking more than at least more than we see anybody else. We really only see her tracking things, and then uh, her brother says, well, she's really good at this and all that. But I think that one of the key things that even the older woman does say is that like the key is not just hunting well, but also surviving. And so I think obviously I'll just say this is a screenplay which is heavy on trajectory. um, where when she's the older woman says that about surviving, we're going to be like, okay, well, obviously this young woman's going to be the survivor, and she's going to, learn, how to. She's going to learn certain ways to survive, and she's a good hunter and all that. And there is this little orange flower that she's learned to, pick from, the grass and the ground, and it has some type of a healing qualities when it comes to injury. Ground it up, you could put it on an injury, or if you eat it, it will cool down a fever and cool down your body pressure, body temperature. Now, I watched this for the second time this afternoon with my daughter and my wife, and my daughter's like, as soon as that's introduced, she's gonna be like, that's how she's gonna win. My daughter, she remembered. She vaguely remembers seeing the Arnold Schwarzenegger one, and I'll have to re-show it to her. But she was like, okay, with that Predator vision, the classic Predator vision, um, my daughter's like, oh, she's gonna use that orange grounded up flower. She's gonna eat that to camouflage herself from the Predator. And sure enough, that's how Naru winds up, winning. or surviving. So like I said, it's kind of heavy on trajectory when it comes to those things. You know, it's like, oh, that's going to play out later. There's a lot of that's going to play out later, and you know, fine. You know, and again, I said early on that this is, you know, kind of a simple, streamlined, you know, tale, which I kind of like. I didn't mind that at all, as opposed to Shane Black's like scattershot, complicated, like not even complicated, just like kitchen sink type of approach to this franchise, especially tonally. But yeah, I mean, this plays out interesting. It mentioning that last movie, I almost felt like the introduction to Predator in this movie was kind of similar to the last movie, just because we're seeing what I thought initially in this movie is that we're seeing something is happening in the sky, you know, and Naru is like, they, you know, the other thing that's cool here is they, obviously we know that this tribe does not know anything about futuristic technology. Okay, that's interesting.
Why would they?
Yeah. So
Yes.
that's an interesting juxtaposition right there. Is that okay? That's pretty cool. But she sees this thing coming out of the sky, and she's like, "I saw a thunderbird," you know, to her brother. It's a sign. But what I thought is like, okay, well, this is uh, another entrance, introduction to the predator. It looks like the ship is like, it looks like it was injured, or not the ship injured, but it was like damaged in its crash landing on Earth. But then the next time we see him, it looks like the ship is just like lowering itself and then dropping off the predator, and he's going on his hunt. So I don't know what happened there.
I think what happened, and because I'm just going to pull a sidebar here, and I'm going to rely on you to keep me on track. I watched this movie 1.25 times approximately. The first time, last week, we as bona fide members of the press got screeners
Don't get me
for
started.
Prey, and I shut mine off after about 25 minutes because my name, oftentimes, here's a little inside baseball for those who wonder what it's like to be a film critic reviewing stuff, all the perks and all that. A lot of times they watermark screeners, especially digital screeners we get online. Sometimes they're unobtrusive. Sometimes, like in the case of Prey, it shows up as nearly a third of the bottom of the screen in a watermark that is just about opaque. And I was messaging you about this because we were supposed to record this episode earlier.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm just gonna wait for Hulu because this is unforgivable. So I watched that. I thought it was kind of a jarring opening scene as well. Watching it in the full context of the movie and knowing what to look out for. I think what that was it was just the ship, like the thrusters on the back of it somehow like burst through the cloaking, because you don't really see anything else except the kind of the shimmering air around those two giant bursts of the afterburner. So there was nothing wrong with it, but I agree. That's what I thought. And I was kind of thinking, wouldn't that be an interesting take if something, and we kind of saw this in Alien versus Predator Requiem, because the Predalien hatched on board the Predator ship, and I think it crash landed or something. But wouldn't it be cool if the Predator landed on Earth but didn't have any of its weapons, like everything malfunctioned, and so it just had to take on people, warrior to warrior, with no real advantage except the natural resources of a world that it doesn't come from?
Yeah, that would be cool.
We don't get that movie, so let's not talk about it. What we do get is one of the most awkward shots I think I've ever seen.
It was weird.
We're following the ship, up to the sky, and then all of a sudden Prey, and first you see like,
well, it goes up,
copyright,
right?
Yeah, it goes up, but you kind of see like copyright 20th century studios Prey, like you see it upside down. It's like, oh, the logo is up in the sky. That's what she was really reacting to.
Yeah, the screen goes up, and then the letters of the movie go down.
Yeah,
that's weird, but
very odd. But so yeah, the ship just it's landing, it's letting off this predator. We see him from the back. It's kind of dark, and we see him
cloaking device.
Jump out and go wherever he's gonna go. But
happy hunting, pick you up later.
Yeah. There's a lot There are a few things I liked about this movie and a whole lot I didn't like. And I think if it had been as simple, I think as you're describing it, I would have appreciated a lot more. I'm kind of in the camp that if I had paid to go see this movie on the big screen, I probably would have been pissed coming out because I feel like it is an average Predator movie
Yeah.
with a couple of above average details in it. Um, what did I like? I liked the bits of information we get about human culture and also predator culture. The orange blossom thing or whatever, that was kind of interesting. I like that we find out how the predator gets those trophies that it carries around. You know, he takes the head of a wolf or a coyote or something, and he sprays it with this stuff that like disintegrates everything except the skull, and then he kind
You've
of
seen
hooks
that
it onto his
before though.
belt. I don't remember. Where did we see that before?
Yeah, it was I think it was in Predator 2 or it was in one of the Predators. Probably
Okay.
Predator 2 because yeah, I remember I think he was doing that with a human skull.
Okay, I
Yeah.
sorry, it felt new to me. I didn't real It's been
Yeah.
a while since I've watched Predator
Yeah.
2. So okay, so that's another strike against the movie for me. No, I the issue I had is it goes back to a problem that I've got with a lot of modern movies, and this is no exception. There seems to be a lot of stories that are historical tales going back to center specifically on women in history, and that encapsulates movies as diverse as Moana, Brave. I wrote down a bunch of them here. Encanto, The Aeronauts, and now this movie, where the whole point of the story is things sucked for women in the past. We have one that's going to buck the trends and rise up and become, just basically buck all the gender norms and show the guys how it's done. You know, that's fine a couple of times, but this is another one of those films where it feels like there is an agenda, a story that was foremost, and the actual story of the film was secondary to that. And in making it secondary, they lose a lot of the truth that belongs in a story like that. The Comanche, from what I've read, are not the tribe of Indians to try and pull this cutesy, like, oh, I really want to be a hunter. And the guys are like, well, sure. They also did this in the live action Aladdin remake, where at the end, Jasmine stands up as the supreme ruler of a people that for thousands of years have regarded, women pretty much as second class citizens, and everybody's applauding. At the end of this movie, she comes out of the woods with the predator's head, and she's immediately kind of accepted, and she's an equal, and in a lot of ways, kind of hoisted up, I guess, further than that. The Comanche were a very warlike tribe, which, as you might expect, a predator going up against a warrior, like a true warrior tribe. Comanche, a rough translation of that name is enemy, because they were the big bad of the Native American tribes, back in the day. They were known for raiding, raping, pillaging. They were not, as depicted in this movie, just the people that hang out at camp and they skin their buffalo hides and they send out the boys to go and hunt stuff because we're gonna go kill some varmints to bring back for lunch. They had captives and slaves, and they did not very nice things. So in order to try and tell this story, my long-winded way of saying it is, if there was a person like Naru in the Comanche tribe, I don't think she would have lasted this long, especially when she's, kind of introducing these 21st century ideas 300 years before anybody even considered, the idea that a woman could hunt. And that sort of, I'm watching this movie thinking about, what all this other stuff means, and wondering, what is this weird fantasy, especially because it's grounded. They went so far as to record a Comanche audio track that you could watch this movie, which I did. I watched it with the Comanche dubbing. And as I messaged you earlier, it helped because I was not impressed with Amber Midthunder's acting, which I felt was very too modern. I felt like I was watching a CW show set in the woods.
I don't think it was
And
just her
as
though.
Yeah, I mean, like, okay, her brother, the actor who played Taabe, I thought he was great. I like the older lady, the kind of the grandmotherly figure, but she, Amber Midthunder sticks out like a sore damn thumb in terms of performance here.
I didn't mind her performance at all. In fact, I thought like I think she's a great silent performer. I think
Yeah,
she's great. Her physicality is great. Her eyes are very expressive. Um, I think the jarring thing for me was like I watched this twice, and the first time I watched it was in English because I didn't realize there was a Comanche dub
you
option.
kind of you have to look for it.
You
It's
got to look
weird.
for it, yeah. And so I was like, I guess I'm gonna have to get used to Native Americans speaking English because this just doesn't seem right. I mean, even when they tried to do, like even in like say like Dance with Wolves or something, it's like you don't hear them speaking English. It's their language. And so
Yeah.
it's like, man, if you're gonna go out of your way to put this in 1719 Great Northern Plains, let's have them speak their language. So when I watched it again in Comanche dub, I was just like, uh, this is more like it, and I think that you you get that more of a CW feel when they're delivering these English lines, it and also when they're kind of the way they're kind of I still think it has something to do with the English language, but the way they're actually kind of interacting and treating each other seems a bit too modern in the
Yeah.
English with the English language. But when they're you know act when we in the Comanche dub when we see them talk their language, even though it's translated in English down in the bottom, and I don't think all of the English translation is totally like this. English subtitles are totally like perfect.
Well,
It
no,
doesn't.
there's one key difference I picked up from that 25 minutes I watched.
Yeah.
Um, when she's in the tent with her grandmother or whoever,
Mhm.
um, she's like, the old lady says, "Why do you want to hunt?" And she says, "Because you don't think I can." In the Comanche dub, it's, "Why do you want to hunt?" And she says, I'm going to butcher this, but it's something like, "Because nobody thinks I can do it well."
Right.
There's,
And
but those are two very different
very different.
things. And I'm
And
almost wondering if it's not a matter of translation, but like if you're making this for a certain audience, like what would they think of that line? I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, it could be either way. Then right immediately after that, when Taabe enters the tent, she makes a joke about falling asleep to his story, and even in Comanche dub, that joke doesn't translate. It translates differently. It's a little. It doesn't. The joke isn't delivered as well as it is in English.
Yeah.
So look, the Comanche dub is preferable. It's the much better way to watch this movie. Um, but I think that English language really kind of hinders the movie in a way. Oh, overall though, I, I I was when I watched this the second time, I wanted to bring this up in this podcast. What would you have thought if we didn't see the predator until it revealed itself to the tribe?
Would have been better. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean, I think it would have just because it'd be more immersive and we're looking at it from their story. This is the storytelling approach here is one in which it's very common storytelling trope where the storytellers are letting the audience in on something that the protagonist and everybody else in the movie probably doesn't know about. Okay,
yeah.
so obviously we see that like we mentioned the predator landing. And it's supposed to trigger in us acknowledgement of, oh, this is a predator movie. Oh, we know this is what when we see the ant getting eaten by the mouse getting eaten by the snake, and the predator ripping open the snake and taking its spine or whatever. We're like, oh yeah, that's what a predator does. But even if our the first time we see the predator is that whole ant mouse snake thing, that would have been great. um you know I don't know, I just feel like too much information was given to us early on, where I think if we were uh introduced to like this bizarre creature that's pretty much bigger than a bear, standing up on its hind legs, if we were introduced slowly to this creature the same way that the Comanche tribe is, I think it would have been just, well, even more effective, I think.
You know, I think there's a perfect scene in this movie to introduce the predator. And I agree. The one drawback of that is I think you risk having it be too close to the 87 original in terms of pace, because it really is a mystery.
Yeah.
And I don't think you're going to get that. You can't put that genie back in the bottle.
Right.
Well, although you could, because this is this is Hollywood, this is sci-fi fantasy. You can come up with a way to make something even within the Predator universe, which is pretty well worn, ways to surprise the audience, which
Right.
that was one of the letdowns of this, is I wasn't really surprised by anything. But I think the scene where Naru is she's tracking a bear, and she, essentially her bow snaps, and she has the high ground, but the bear hears the bow snap, looks up and sees Naru, and instead of, because the geography is really great in this scene,
Yeah, it is.
because you figure, well, maybe she's in a spot of safety. No, the bear just runs around and then runs up the hill right after
the dog.
her. Yeah, with the dog. And there's this great chase through water and then up onto this beach, and the bear almost gets her until the predator shows up and starts wrestling this bear invisible. I think if that had been 25 minutes into the movie, where essentially you're watching prey just thinking, oh, this is, and I don't know if you would have been able to pull this off with marketing, but can you imagine if this had just been a movie presented as Native American slice of life, and then all of a sudden a freaking predator shows up?
Amazing.
And then everything goes from there. But I agree. I think there's, that would have been a fun approach.
Yeah. And I think we get, especially in that scene right there, I think we get what I'm getting at, in that she is so shocked by what she's seeing. She's never seen anything like this. None of them have. And I think that that's the strength of this movie, is that, like, this is something that to, not to sound too cliche, but is out of this world, like, literally.
Yeah.
But for them, it's just like, this is unfathomable. It's like, no way. Like, just the fact that something is wrestling a bear in front of me, and you could kind of make out what it is, but also, like, the sounds that it is making is something that she's never heard before, just the sounds.
Yeah.
And so that's pretty cool in and of itself. But for her to see, like, a bear get taken out right in front of her, and then get hoisted up into the air by this semi-seen character, I love it.
The blood's pouring out and kind of forming the form of the predator on the beach. That's
cool.
No
wonder she turns around and crawls her way into the rapids of the river and everything. And I love that whole sequence is great.
When this movie becomes The Revenant with the Predator, I think it's most effective. I mean, there's the scene, and of course I know she's going to survive because this happens not even halfway through, but there's a scene where she's in the woods, and she falls into, like, essentially a quicksand kind of mud trap. And she has to get her way out, and she's sinking. And as an audience member, kind of what you're talking about, the storytellers are letting the audience in on things that the characters aren't aware of. We know she's going to be fine, but it's kind of like, all right, at what point is she going to start being fine? She should have been fine a minute ago. She's deeper and deeper.
She's sinking.
Her nostrils are just above the mud.
You hear the gurgling of the mud.
The sucking sound. It's horrifying. And she's got this axe that she's rigged up with a rope, and she's tossing it over to this collection of, like, branches to try and essentially make a grappling hook to pull herself out. And she keeps kind of missing. And it's, even though she gets out, and even though that's foreshadowing for something that's going to come into play later, of course, right? It's a thrilling moment. And I agree. I think if they had just, I had two kind of wish lists for this movie. It would have been great if she had been kicked out of the tribe or insubordination and had to strike out on her own. And that's where she encounters this thing. Maybe she goes back to the tribe to try and warn them. Nobody believes her because A, she's a woman, and B, she's been outcast or whatever. that would have been amazing, because you could have had this almost one-on-one type of a battle with the predator. Maybe she's
Right.
trying to prevent it from getting back to camp.
Yeah.
Because the other story I wanted to see, and this goes back to what I was talking about the Comanche before, you watching this movie, it's very puzzling because everyone's like wrapped up in like, oh my gosh, it's Native American history, but it's not. It's almost wearing the pelt of a Native American history. Give these, noble warrior people the chance to show what they can do. Go, a tribe of hunters who are, absolute maniacs going up against the unstoppable, space killing machine, and see what happens. We don't get that. Like, everything happens out in the middle of the woods. The great thing about the 87 Predator was Dutch and his, crew of military folks, they were stranded in, was it South America?
Yeah.
They were sent there on a mission. Help is not coming for, a while. But in this case, they were a couple of miles walking distance from the village. Now, this gets to a big issue I have narratively with, which I think is a giant cheat. At one point, she's out with the hunting party. They've retrieved one of their own who was attacked by a cat, a giant cat,
We think. Yeah.
trying to get him back to camp. She ends up going face to face with this battle cat at night on top of a tree on this wavering branch. The branch snaps, she falls, the thing lunges,
Hits her head in the rock.
and then
Gets
she
knocked
wakes
out.
up in camp the next day.
Yeah.
And there's this whole convoluted thing of like, well, Taabe came by and found her and brought her back to camp. Did he find her right before this thing like ripped its giant teeth into her and dragged her off into a cave somewhere? None of this makes any sense.
It's a little foggy. I think we're left to assume that, Taabe basically got the mountain lion's attention and took care of the mountain lion after that. Like, she was knocked out and then he came, and because, yeah, remember, he was on the ground kind of drawing the lion in with like blood on the ground. And so he was already on the ground. They were on in the tree. And I was led to assume that he just got the cat's attention, once she fell on the ground. But yeah,
Again, I feel like that's a
you're
big
right,
leap
though.
because there's a big action scene with a lot of expository
Yeah.
stuff. Because yeah, to me it's kind of like uh you know Luke Skywalker's in the back to tank and no one wakes him up until after Jedi is over or something like, and hey, everyone's free now.
And that's again another trajectory thing, because that whole scene happened, and her waking up in the tent is for her to later have a conversation with her brother, basically saying, "Hey, you were almost there. You were doing good. You just couldn't bring it home." And of course, later on, she's gonna bring it home, as you mentioned. In fact, it is the predator's head. So, and I think I will. I'll grant you, I would have been cool to have that scenario of her being outcast and trying to fend for herself out there and preventing this creature from going back to her tribe. But I will say I did like the idea of her and her brother kind of, trying to figure out a way in an action sequence, figure out a way of taking out the predator.
Yeah, again,
Yeah.
there are ways to make this story make sense, but you know, it just I'm sorry, I'm watching this thinking this doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm not, a historical scholar by any means. We haven't even talked about the French fur trappers,
Oh,
um, who, and again, this goes back to a like a more of a technical issue and a very bizarre decision. I took 4 years of French in high school, and I'm kind of glad I did watching this movie because there's a lot of scenes, like a significant chunk of like Act Two that's taken up with Naru and Taabe's encounter with these, French fur trappers.
mhm.
And all of their dialogue is in French, and the subtitles in the Comanche dub are also in French.
Right.
Which is weird. Be like, well, but it's it's all foreign language track. No, because the directions, like the scene directions, like grunts or groans or Naru
English.
squeaks or whatever, is in English.
Yeah.
So that doesn't fly. So I don't understand why we don't get that visibility into what the French fur trappers were saying, except that they're just painted as the cartoonish
Yeah.
colonialists,
Sacre bon.
monsters.
Yeah.
Right. And I know they called them some not great names and all that, but again, it is a very popular but one-dimensional view of the relationship between the different peoples who are kind of fighting out this war in the plains back, 300 years ago.
Yeah, and I think I don't know about you, but I think it would have been interesting to at least establish that the Comanche that already knew that there were fur trappers out there.
Yeah.
Because she seems surprised. She comes upon this clearing of all these skinned buffalo. Now, buffalo are very sacred to, the Comanche tribe and a lot of Native American tribes. But so it is very just shocking and heartbreaking scene for her to see. And of course, I call this a nod to Dutch as well. You see this cigarette, debris, cigarette butt, right next to the one of the bisons, and she realizes that this is not this is not one of us, and this is not from the creature that most likely it's not from the creature that I'm is hunting me and I'm hunting. Um, so, and we knew if you paid attention, it might be a little hard to tell at first, but it is a cigarette butt, and so we're like, okay, there must be fur traders or something, And so, for me, it just would have been interesting that she figured it out once she's captured in the French fur traders campground. She does the math because she sees a guy with a stogie in his mouth and everything. She's like, you're the guy who killed the buffaloes. But again, I think it would have been interesting to, even if they had some kind of a conversation of like, yeah, we are seeing more white men in the area, or something, it would be at least so it's on their radars, something. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, and that's as with a lot of history, the details are complicated. A little known fact: I used to do reenactments years ago with my wife and her family of the French and Indian War, and out here in Illinois and parts of Indiana. So there's a big respect for the history of the different cultures that make up the Americas, and you also realize that the kind of one-dimensional conquering colonizers thing, it's a lot stickier than white men good and Indian, or white men
Right.
bad, Indians good, and everyone just got taken over and everything. There were actually the French and Indian War, there were conflicts in which the English and the French were fighting each other, and there were different tribes of Indians supporting either side in these skirmishes. And before the white man came to the shores of America, the Indians were killing each other. There were intertribal conflicts.
Mhm.
So there's this kind of popular mythology that the Europeans introduced slavery and butchery and conquest, and that's just not historically accurate. I guess I'm asking for a little bit too much nuance in a Predator movie,
Yeah.
but I'm like, I didn't ask for this. People decided to set this movie in this time. So it's like, if you're going to do that, either get into it or skirt it enough in a smart enough way that me knowing something about history, I'm not going to be going, wait, what?
Yeah, watching this the second time, I was thinking to myself, I would have really appreciated it if this was gonna go all out, like say Apocalypto. Like if this was like Apocalypto meets Predator or something, where Mel Gibson was totally immersed and very he was almost took like like the way Robert Eggers approached the Northman. It's like very in all his previous two movies, just very much a scholar of the setting, the era. Um, I don't know. I guess because this is a Predator movie, I'm not too nitpicky about it. Just because I'm not expecting this to be this historically accurate depiction, of life back then. It's more about the hunt. It's more about a different type of entry in a familiar franchise. Uh, that being said, I totally understand where you're coming from, and that would have been great. I just wasn't expecting that from this type of movie.
And that's sort of what bothers me on not your enjoyment of it,
Yeah.
because like I said, I thought there was some cool stuff going on in this movie, but
Mhm.
we talked you and I talked about the aeronauts years ago, didn't we?
I
I
don't think so.
I think so.
We might have.
The Eddie Redmayne
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Felicity Jones
Right,
movie,
right, right.
right? And I spoke with the writer director about that of that movie, and it was a good interview. I respect him as a filmmaker, and it was an entertaining movie. But after it was over, because I didn't know anything about the characters going in, is essentially these two English scientists who invent the first kind of weather balloon, and they invent modern weather telling technology by taking this hot air balloon up into these great heights, and they can't get down, and it's very harrowing. It's an adventure. After it was over, because I'm like, I want to know more about these people. This sounds really great because Felicity Jones played this, really, again, a pioneering woman in history. And it turns out that the creative team and the movie behind the film decided, hey, we're going to take the real life guy that this was based on and turn him into an inspiring female figure who never existed. My problem with movies like that and like Prey is that if especially because at the end of this movie when Naru comes back to the tribe, you've got this shot of all of these women in the tribe like looking kind of hopefully at her and like, oh, you're our inspiration and
You're going to be the one.
maybe things can change around here. uh if some, I don't imagine a 12-year-old girl watching Prey, but let's just say that they did, and they're like, oh, this is inspiring, I want to go back and learn about the Comanche, they sound like a really interesting people. And you find out that women and horses were chattel. The Comanche themselves were rapers and pillagers, and they loved scalping. It's going to be potentially traumatizing. I don't think there should be 100% verity in popular sci-fi entertainment, but a little would be nice.
Yeah, I would have appreciated a little bit more animosity between the genders in the tribe. Um, there
if
was
it
it
if
was a
it
lot.
was warranted. I mean, that's the thing, is we looking back on our 21st
No.
century lens, we don't know. And I don't, I have not read accounts of like what it was like to be
Yeah,
a woman in a tribe, but I don't know that it was necessary, if they would have even thought about things like, what if things could be different? Maybe they would have been like, what are you talking about different? This is the way it is for these reasons, be it cultural,
right.
spiritual, whatever. We can't imagine looking back with our 21st century kind of angst over these issues saying like, how could you not want more? I'm
Right.
not saying that there aren't those accounts, but I don't necessarily need to see something like that, because I don't, unless it's based on historical accuracy,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think for a storytelling device to create some tension within the tribe, I mean, I think that they could have hit on that a little stronger or heavier. Instead, there's just more kind of like ribbing, like, turn around, we don't need you here, go
We
back
don't
to the.
need a cook. Yeah,
Yeah, we don't need
that's
to cook. It's like, oh boy, a lot of cliche stuff that feels more like something you would hear from, say, like, you know, white people or something. It's just
well.
like,
But this movie, I was looking up the screenwriter, and he doesn't have a whole lot of credits to his name, but Patrick Allison wrote the story with Dan Trachtenberg, I guess.
mhm,
I mean, it's just a couple of white dudes. I mean, that's the thing, is like and that's not to disparage, white people, and certainly not to suggest that you can only write about, Native American, history if you are of that lineage.
mhm.
But it's kind of I was talking about the Wes Craven movie, The People Under the Stairs, last week with Mark on his show, and I thought that was just the ham-fisted early 90s racial politics of like the guilty white liberal thinking this is how black people talk to each other.
Mm.
I was like, no, this feels the same way.
Yeah, I mean, you do have a Native American producer, Jane Myers. So like, again, I don't know how much influence she had on, you know, the story. Obviously, she's not listed as one of the screenwriters. So I feel like that there is, there could have been an influence or um, something there that would help it be a little bit more authentic. But I don't know. I don't know what the overall goal was. I think again, it's just to tell a straightforward tale of hunter prey in this time period among this tribe, and not really paying attention to the type of historical details that you and maybe others wanted. Um, yeah, again, I wasn't that disappointed by that because I wasn't really,
Oh, your mic's going out again.
I wasn't. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you
Yeah, I
now.
wasn't too disappointed by that because again, I wasn't really expecting that. But I can understand while watching it, you're thinking, there's something missing here. Um, yeah, I think overall, we haven't really touched too much on like the predator itself. How different is this predator? This is probably one of the last. Okay, so we had. This is more like the first two movies, just because this is the sole predator that we see. Um,
Yeah.
now, now, if you're not counting the last scene of Predator 2 where you see other predators, but there's predators on a different, like a prison planet. There's Alien versus Predator, and then there's the Predator, which was the Shane Black one, which had like a predator fighting another predator. Um, so all we see is this one predator, and I forget the name of the guy who played the actual predator, but um, anyways, we could look that up. Oh yeah, Dane DeLiegro. And I think
Hmm.
he's like kind of like an MMA fighter. He's a big dude, obviously, because he's a predator. Um, Physically, it was cool and everything. Is it that much different than, I think, the design? Like once he had this like helmet off, and I think the helmet, I was reading in the trivia on IMDb, the helmet
You're
itself,
oh, sorry, your audio blanked out again.
wonderful. The helmet itself, I was reading the trivia here, and it's actually, I guess, a reference back to um, the Predators movie. I guess it
Oh,
showed up in as one of the, let me see here. It says one of the ghost, the river ghost from Predators. I don't the
what?
skull of a river ghost from Predators. I don't remember that, but it almost makes me want to go back and watch that. But um, so
Yeah,
one,
it is an alien kind of carapace that it's wearing on its head, not
yeah,
like the very technologically advanced like metal helmet we see in the 87 version. So
right,
it's interesting. The thing that kind of annoyed me was, okay, we don't get a really good look at the predator's face. Um, and I think part of that is, camera work, but part of it, it reminded me of the xenomorphs from Alien Resurrection, where the fine details of the creature's face are kind of glossed over, and or just like there's buckets of slime kind of covering it to obscure the details. I couldn't tell what the hell I was looking at except the mandibles, which seemed to reach out like 3 feet from its face. I'm like, that isn't even consistent with, maybe it's a different, type of predator than the one from 87, but everyone's so caught up on the jaw work of these creatures that they forget when this thing took off its helmet in the first Predator movie, its face was completely bunched up.
yeah,
Like the
yeah.
mandibles, everything kind of come out when
And
it's
then it came
pissed, but
out, yeah,
right, but that's his face is it's not like our lips like go like all big and everything when we
right.
talk. It's kind of like it's a special thing, I get the feeling. And this was just so exaggerated. It's like, what am I looking at here?
And that's the thing that was surprising about the first movie is that when we first see a good look at the face, it's when Arnold sees a good look at him. Dutch is on the ground and he's like, "What the hell are you?" You know, and and that's what we were thinking too. It's like, oh my gosh. Um, but I think here, from what I caught, and what I glimpsed at after that helmet is off, is it's kind of interesting because he has more of a protruded brow that kind of comes out and curls over, so he looks a little bit different than some of the other predators, which I appreciated. It's like they're all going to be, they can't all look the same, like the xenomorphs or anything, but so it's kind of cool, like I don't know. I always kind of I if if you compare them to say like Klingons, Klingons are all going to look kind of the same, but yet kind of different.
Yeah.
There's enough difference. There's subtle differences. So I guess I kind of appreciated like what I could see. I noticed that it was noticeably different from at least the first Predator that we saw in '87. Um, I can't remember like all the other Predators that we saw in Predators or the Predator, but even then I noticed that they all didn't look the same. So I kind of like the fact that this is somewhat different. Did you feel like there's a lot of references in this movie to how smart she is. Do you feel like she caught on a little bit too fast regarding like his technology and what she could do with his technology, especially in that
Yeah.
final scene?
Yeah. I mean, but
Yeah,
uh,
for movie's sake, I guess it just
it just would have been interesting if she had tried to get things to work and they didn't. Like
well,
there's that
there's the
little,
gun thing.
which one? Oh,
Well,
they
the whole French gun thing that
oh
she
right.
couldn't really get that to work. But
Right, but I mean getting a hold of his tech, like if you made that kind of thematic, like if she got a hold of the Predator's technology and it didn't work, and then she tried the Frenchman's gun thing and that didn't work, so she had to go back to, well,
the
instead of trying
tomahawk,
to cheat my way
yeah,
out of it, I'm just going to use what I know, what I'm good at, But
right,
there could have been some message in there, like, just because the technology is new and cool and fancy and it's, high tech weaponry, that doesn't mean it, can. It's like the Ewoks versus the Empire thing, right?
right, right, right,
You've
right.
got these ATSTs, but they get taken out by a couple of logs like
Yep.
coming out of the woods. Um, but and that's the thing, is I feel like I don't need to ever see a Predator movie again. Um, really,
Yeah.
because I feel like they keep coming up with these really cool premises that just kind of fizzle out in the third act or maybe even earlier. Like I
Well,
liked the idea of Predators, like setting it on an alien world with like the baddest of the bad human beings.
yeah.
I don't remember much about the Predator except that I kind of had fun with it because I'm a Shane Black guy.
Hmm.
Um, and I like the idea of this movie, but the execution, I'm like, I feel like there's these brilliant seeds for a sequel, but then someone in the studio system is like, yeah, but it's a Predator movie, so don't spend too much time on the
Right,
screenplay and
right,
stuff.
right. Exactly. Yeah, we got to hit some tropes here. Um, I guess this movie did remind me that, like, look, a Predator movie can be anything, because this could happen in the Middle Ages. This could happen. I mean, I mentioned Northmen. This could, Predator could have dropped during the Vikings, in Norway or somewhere. I mean, that would have been amazing. It's like, or why doesn't he drop somewhere where there's no hunting going on in like a peaceful planet, and people are forced to, or in the future, like have like not necessarily Predator meets Wally, but like how in the movie Wally, the the human race has become so sedentary and not very active, let's say, and not used to doing things and having everything done for them, all of a sudden Predator, and he's like, who do I have to fight here? This isn't fair, because there's
That
no
that'd be a good comedy, because like maybe his orders are, you can't, we're not, no one's gonna pick you up until you kill something. It's like, well, there's
right
nothing on this planet that could possibly hurt me.
that could possibly hurt me or fight me. There's no apex predators here. Um, yeah, yeah, I think it did remind me of like, okay, what if Predator landed in the Old West? What if Predator landed, like I said, Middle Ages or something? He's got to deal with the bubonic plague as well. It's like, the whatever. I just think that it also reminded me of like that there's a lot of stories that could be told, yet they don't have to be told in movie form. I think comic book form is great. Like I said, one of my favorite stories is the Batman versus Predator, at least the first miniseries. Marvel is just releasing, I think, next week a brand new Marvel
Yeah,
Predator comic because
this
they,
coming week, yeah.
yeah, because they have the rights to Alien and Predator. The Alien comic that they've put out so far just kind of sucks to me. Um,
It's intermittently interesting. I mean, like some of the story arcs land and some of them really don't, and I feel like they're still trying to find their footing. Like What is this?
I guess what drove me nuts was I typically like the artist Salvador Larroca, and in the first couple of issues, I'm seeing him basically draw himself in the story, and that
Yeah,
pulls me out. And yeah,
yeah.
sure, that's a deep cut only for people who know, but I've seen that done before where certain artists will like, oh, this character is definitely designed to look like Bruce Willis or Steve Buscemi or something, and it's just like, no, I don't want that. It's like, then go make that movie. I don't want to see that in comics. Anyway, that's a nitpick, but I think a Predator comic could be a little bit more interesting than say like an Alien comic. But we'll see.
Potentially. I mean, what I like is that you keep saying what if, what if, what if. Well, Disney Marvel owns all of this stuff now. So
True.
they could have why not, or why limit the what if TV series to Marvel properties?
Oh wow, that would be interesting. I mean, if you're gonna go there, I mean, you could put Predator against Iron Man, or whatever. And you know, that being said, I mean, Dark Horse Comics in the early '90s had their whole Predator and Alien run of comics,
Yeah.
which a lot of them are good.
And I think that was one of the other kind of gripes about Alien versus Predator is there's a great Dark Horse miniseries from
Yeah,
91 or 92 called Alien versus Predator.
yeah,
And it's nothing like the movie. It takes place on an alien planet, in the far future, ahead of its time, strong female protagonist caught between these two, kind of warring factions. It's the kind of thing that I think if you were to adapt faithfully today would have been, would be a blockbuster.
yeah.
But they, like with a lot of Hollywood screenplays, we've got the rights to this very popular graphic novel.
But what do
We
we
also
do?
have screenwriters that need to justify their jobs. So yeah, come up with something completely different than the source material.
Yeah, I mean, we see that with the DC films. Um, yeah.
Well, not anymore.
Oh yeah. Now it's going to be called what? DC Studios? Okay. Well, let's see.
Well, I
We'll
was going
see.
to say are there going to be movies left that are going to be adaptations of anything? Like the
Yeah.
axis swinging left and right.
Oh,
But
it's crazy.
yeah, it's a nuts time. But here's like, yeah, Prey, I did not enjoy it. It gave me a lot to think about,
Mhm.
but it just kind of made me want to visit that alternate universe where we get what this movie could have been. And I feel
Yeah.
like there's nothing that prevents it from rivaling the 87 classic with Schwarzenegger, except
Yeah. I
the people who
mean,
are behind it.
yeah. Again, I also really liked, like I said, the first sequel, Predator Two,
Mm.
because it's also humans in over their head, but in like, because as soon as even as when I saw the first Predator in high school, I was thinking, okay, that's a jungle setting. What would have happened if this Predator landed in Chicago, Los Angeles? And that's what we get with the second movie. It's landing in Los Angeles, and
During
it's
like the hottest time of the year, so it's
hottest
getting
time of the
that.
year. It's
Yeah.
dealing with gang warfare and everything, and you got crazy Gary Busey in there, and you got all that stuff. I mean, it's a fun movie. Um, so you know, that's why I appreciate Prey is because it takes that kind of like, to me, a good Predator movie is all about where are you setting this? What kind of geography are you? Where is this Predator landing in an unfamiliar territory like Predators, or you know, what kind of is it? Is it in a densely populated area like the jungle or something like that, or is it going to be in an urban setting or something? Um, Here, it's different for us. We haven't seen something like this before, so I was all into it, all for it, especially like I said in the Comanche dub, uh, the preferred viewing, I think.
Yeah.
It doesn't set itself up for anything else. As far as another spin-off or a sequel, and I appreciated that.
Well, it kind of
Um,
does though,
where how? What, because of the gun thing?
because of the gun thing.
Yeah, but that's just more of a nod and a deep cut. I mean,
No,
people,
but
if this is your first Predator movie, you're not thinking, "Oh, this is going to happen again."
well, no, and that's sort of the problem though, is it's a cheap, it's a rotten Easter egg because anybody who, if you have no familiarity with it, then you're like, okay, cool, because this signifies something within the story that makes sense, right? We know how she got the gun, and that's all we know about, right? That's all we care about.
So how did the
If
Predator
you
get the
are
gun to
familiar with,
hand to? Danny
Hmm?
Glover. Is that what you're getting at?
Right. But if you
Yeah.
are familiar with Predator, then you're thinking, okay, there either has to be a sequel to Prey, or because something has to happen with that gun so it gets back in the hands of the Predator, so then it can be handed back to
Yeah, I
Danny
hear what
Glover's
you're saying.
character in 1992.
I hear what you're saying. Or 90. I
Yeah.
totally hear what you're saying. I think what leaves it kind of ambiguous is the whole. It does look like I said at the beginning, the predator gets dropped off. You have fun at the mall, go hunt some kids or whatever, go hunt your prey, and we'll pick you up later. Or is the ship on autopilot? Or wouldn't I'm sure that this tribe just thinks that this is this one-off creature that existed somewhere, some kind of mythological, like a Wendigo type thing out there. It's not even these. There's not even a thought or a comprehension of how did this thing get here. Are there more of them? Did this thing come in a vehicle? The vehicles are horses to them. It's like,
Yeah.
so I don't
Again,
know.
wonderful things to explore in a movie that's actually about something.
Yeah,
Because I mean, in the moment, because we're only dealing with these, I'll call them kids, they're like in their 20s, out in the woods, fighting for survival, fighting against the French fur trappers. They don't, they don't have time for these giant conversations.
sure.
I am almost positive that the scene after the end scene of, Prey is people looking at this head of this monster and asking the questions that you're asking.
Yeah.
Are there more of them? Because yeah,
What are we gonna do? Yeah.
yeah, she saw the ship. She didn't even see the ship land. She saw
No.
it coming out of the sky.
Yeah.
And
It just looked like fire from the sky.
right. So she might think that there's some connection between that and the creature's appearance, but she could just as well think of it as some kind of like an omen, like there's something bad coming, and
Yeah.
not necessarily that this is the thing that's dropping this creature in your midst. They could wonder, okay, now are we surrounded by these new animals in the jungle?
Yeah.
Like, are
Yeah.
they everywhere?
Are we their prey now, or are there more of them? And she's told her tribe when she comes back, we need to move. We need to go to a higher location or something. It's like, okay, well, how is she arriving at that? I mean, I guess she's probably thinking there's more out there like them, this thing. But so, I don't know. Based on what, not as far as she knows, none of there was no other similar creature that came to this creature's rescue, or it's not like there were any relatives or anything. It's like, I don't know.
And also, could she be wondering if there's something that would, because that's a big theme of this movie is,
Always a bigger
people,
fish.
yeah, people hunting things that are also
Yeah,
hunting them. So could there be a conversation like, well, what if there's an apex predator for this thing that,
yeah.
we've fought? How do we defend against it? I mean, not to get into awful sequels here, but I mean, Independence Day, whatever the second one was,
Yeah, too.
the one interesting idea there was they, after the aliens cleared out, we took all of their tech and evolved it because we knew someday these things might come back.
Right.
So my question is, maybe this would be room for a sequel, but I don't know if what they would do with this particular material. What if the Comanche were able to figure something out, a greater truth about these creatures and prepare for all out war? What does that do to a culture when they're facing, just a bunch of Europeans on boats?
Mm,
And they're like, well, we've seen
yeah,
these,
we
I'm
can
sure
handle you.
right, but I'm sure the Predator, it didn't blow up. It's left behind its body with all of its weaponry and stuff. What if they were
Right.
able to take this and somehow learn how to use it and essentially become the North American Wakandans, you know?
Yeah.
Use this technology to become a dominating force. I'm spinning out in theories here, but all of these ideas are things I'm like, if I'm going to watch a Predator movie, I don't want to just watch a knockoff of the first Predator. I want it to actually be about something.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I agree with you. I think it would have been nice, but I didn't expect anything
Yeah.
like that. Um, I I wonder if 20th Century Fox ever, like when Trachtenberg and his co-writer were approaching them, if the studios gave them any, like, I don't know, a hard time by not calling this Predator or some type of Predator in the title. Um, maybe they thought it would help to distance itself from the franchise, yet still, I mean, you even have the same type of lettering of the
Yeah.
original movie and the second movie, Prey, you know. Um, so it's not necessarily a reset or a spin-off or a one-off. It's still within the franchise, obviously, but it I think it does want to, even with the title, it does want to try and do something different.
It's kind of like, when you've got Rocky and then Rocky Balboa.
Yeah.
It's there's a bunch of sequels in between that some people fondly remember, but no one is going to be like canonizing them like the
Right.
original film. So like, okay, we'll just make Rocky Balboa as the bookend to this.
Right.
Maybe Predator or Prey is kind of like that. We've got Predator and Prey. It's almost like a phrase quote or something,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
you say Predator and Prey or Prey and Predator, they kind of go together. You don't have to, have, because Predator 5 just sounds tacky.
It does. Yeah. I mean, it's funny because the last two were like Predators,
And
the Predator.
yeah, they
It's
fell
like,
into that Fast and Furious trap. Yikes.
oh yeah. Anyway.
But let's talk about a movie I'm excited to see again on the big screen,
Yeah.
which you're going to be hosting a screening of in a couple of weeks. David, take it away. What movie am I talking about?
Well, we're talking Relative, the fourth feature film from local filmmaker, writer, director Michael Glover Smith. It's a movie both of us like. We've both posted reviews, and I've also posted my interview with Michael. We'll be showing that as part of the After Hours Film Society, which I am often the host and lead film discussions basically with the audience after viewing. It's usually on Monday nights, usually at least 2 Monday nights a month. In this case, it's Monday, August 22nd at the Tivoli Theater in Downers Grove, part of Classic Cinemas in the Chicago suburbs. 7:30. We'll be showing Relative, and Michael Glover Smith will be there along with actress Elizabeth Stamm and maybe somebody else. I'm not sure, but I'll definitely be there to discuss the film. Yes, and Ian will be there.
I'll be in the
I'll
audience asking
Yes,
obnoxious questions. No.
you should, yeah. And I mean, I really want to get a lot of people out there, just mainly because of the special guests. We don't always get directors or actors showing up at the After Hours Film Society, so pretty excited. So that's going to be a fun night, and I'm looking forward to that. So we'll have a good time discussing the film. I've already led like a couple other discussions prior to this, so I'm just having fun, helping to promote an awareness of the movie.
Yeah, and I'm excited to see it. I hosted a screening back in the beginning of summer that was a lot of fun. And this is, it's one of my favorite films of the year, and I'm, excited to see it on the big screen again, because the time I hosted was the first time I saw it, outside of the context of a laptop.
Right.
Yeah, it's just it's a fun film. It's a great kind of family drama, and it's Michael Glover Smith. What more do you need to know? So
Yeah,
yeah, all the info. Oh,
yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
And I'm happy to have it at the Tivoli because it was I recommended this to Michael. I invited him to join me for a screening of The Rescue, my favorite film of last year, in early January at the Tivoli for After Hours. And when he came, he's like, "This is amazing. I've never been here." I'm like, "Yeah, you should show your next movie here." And at that point, I hadn't even seen it. My first screening of it was February 4th, and so that was how the seed was planted, and I'm just glad that it's working, it's happening, it's scheduled, and so I'm excited for him too because he saw this big huge theater and was just fell in love with it, and for him to have this movie there, that's going to be a cool experience for him too.
Yeah, and all the information for tickets and the showtime and all that stuff will be down below in the description. So definitely check that out. Support the After Hours Film Society. David, as you mentioned, you host there a lot. These monthly screenings. So you're doing great work, and I'm excited to actually get to be part of the audience and participate
Cool.
with the Q&A. So yeah, and thank you for talking Prey. it's one of those things. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad people are enjoying this movie. It's very, very highly rated on the old tomato meter. I couldn't get into it, and I had kind of like these giant existential, I guess you could call them, problems with it. Namely, why does it exist? Not me. I know why I'm existing, so I can review movies like this. But yeah, check it out. It's on Hulu right now, so if you have a subscription, you can do it. So, David, we'll talk about something else. I imagine in the near future.
Yeah,
But yeah, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
All
Take
right,
care.
man. Take care. All right, bye.
Bye.